Welcome, everyone. My name is Jenny Cousins, and we are back in the interviewing now. And I have a new show coming out, and I am so excited just because of who I am interviewing tonight. My new show, by the way, is called Soul to Soul Connections with Jenny G, and that will be coming out sometime in November. So for those of you who recognize me, you've probably seen me on Shaw TV when I was hosting and producing a live television show called Soul Work. So there's still YouTube videos up if you want to check it out, and you can look into my column with San Francisco Yoga. I have a Ask Jenny G column there going on where I do readings online, and you can send me questions on that. So, and you've got to stay tuned. I actually directed and produced a film back in January in the Canadian Rocky Mountains that I created, and that's going to be coming out probably next year sometime. But you can find me on North American radio channels all over the place, and check out my website, soulworkwithjenny.com, to get a lot more information. But enough about me. I'm excited because I am interviewing somebody who is very unique, very gifted, very talented, and he is the transmitter of love. He's an amazing channeler. He is from down under Australia. So everyone, you got to get up and not down under to be prepared. He is the co-creator of Co-Creation Magazine, editor-in-chief, and he is creating a huge abundance of higher consciousness. And I'm actually lost for words for what I could even describe Bob as, because he is going to show you just exactly who he is, and you're going to see who he is. And I want to say thank you to Bob Jayco, I'm sorry, for allowing me and giving me the opportunity to have this interview with you, because I'm very honored to be able to talk to you about who you are and why you have created co-creation.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm really delighted to be here today, and for your viewers' perspective, I carry a number of hats. I am the editor-in-chief of Co-Creation Magazine, which is co-creationmagazine.com, and if you have the time, it'll be down in the bottom of the link field. So if you want to find us, go have a look, go check it out, and it's some really exciting stuff. If you're a writer, you want to write for us, then we're really happy to hear from you as well. For those of you in that part of the world up there, which we're down under, you're up there, g'day. So from Australia. And the other hats that I wear is Co-Creation Global, which is an emerging platform, and I will discuss that a little bit later down in the course of the interview. But the real part of me is the part of me that's been with me for 60 years, is that I am humbly a transmission vessel for source consciousness. That's the only way I can describe it. I bring through the wisdom, and that's a key word here, the wisdom of source, which is in the language of source. Now, we call our transmission signal frequency signals of love, because it is exactly what that is. Secondly, we've shortened the name to soul. It sounds a little bit like soul, you know, S-O-U-L, but it's S-O-L, so people identify with it. It's a shortened version. So when I refer to soul, it means signals of love, and that's the energy I've been transmitting since the age of 10. So you could say I've been an apprentice facilitator of wisdom of source since I've been 10, And I've been really a private channel. I haven't been exposed and haven't been brought out of the world, but that changed. And so here I am today with an opportunity to share my story and hopefully help all of you out there to understand why you are here in a physical experience.
So what made you want to create the magazine, and what is your goal with that? Like what is your mission to create co-creation globally and the magazine?
Okay. The magazine was the first step, and in order to answer those two questions, I have to roll back to 2016. As I mentioned, I'm a channel, and it was a sunny day in our part of the world, in a state called Queensland, and I was mowing the lawn, and this voice said to me, "It is time for you to become visible." And normally when S.O.L channels, it's very quiet, but this is really loud. And it was almost like somebody was next to me, really saying these words as though they were actually in my presence. So what happened was a download that started in the front garden, and then I had to go inside to continue it. It went on for 3 hours. What rolled out was, in fact, a vision plan. Now, I'm 72 in 3 weeks.
Wow.
And
You don't look 70.
Thank you.
Right?
I'm 72 in 3 weeks, and I have been, you could say, I had been in a monastic period. I retired in 2002 from the work where I was previously involved in energy medicine, ran a very significant practice in Sydney, Australia, in chronic disease and pain management, and then went into teaching around Australia and New Zealand in the field.
Because you're intuitive, like you're an intuitive medical.
I was before somebody else coined the phrase, I had the ability to diagnose physical illnesses and also produce not only a diagnosis, a prognosis, and a treatment plan for the diseases, totally by reading the energy field. I do have a previous background in the pharmaceutical industry, which I spent many years for in the early 70s. So I have a pretty good understanding of physiology, anatomy, and the structural forms of things. So I can convert language of energy, which is information, into meaningful medical data so doctors can understand what's going on. I'm able to see the cause of diseases wherever they started, and the progression of the diseases to a point I could even see its future prognosis or prognosis. And therefore I could give people advice as to what type of treatment plans, whether medical, alternative or none, they could undertake. We gave them choices, and if they required our assistance, we could provide that.
When did you start? Sorry, when did you start seeing that? Like the medical parts?
It began in 1983 when I first started the practice. It didn't happen straight away. It started evolving when I first started the practice and reached its peak 15 months later, where I could actually sit down with a person and say, "See that knee? You fell off a horse when you were 6, and that knee's never been right since. Everything's locked up," and and say. But I also was able to read the emotional component of diseases, and those emotions actually create the pain. That's where the pain, the emotional pain, the physical pain as well, are all connected to underlying core emotions that we tend to hold on in the body. So I was able to, that's why I started the practice as a pain management practice, but it evolved into a chronic disease practice later on, because it started with people going, so I've got a bag back.
Do you still do that? Like, do you
No,
still?
no, I retired in 2002, and for 16 years I lived a life of living in the moment, doing what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. I built a house. My wife and I would, just veg out, take the dogs down the beach, go for picnics. We wanted to experience the total freedom of not having to do anything for anybody but ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to spend the time. My wife is an ex-medical doctor, and she loves, she's been working on her own healing processes, so it gave her 100% of the space to do that stuff. It also gave me 100% of the space to evolve the skill that I have, and also to integrate it. What I mean by integrate it, it's allowing my body to manage it and be able to handle the capacity of this high frequency without it causing burnout.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, the process of being able to have relatively great financial ability. We were blessed with the ability not to have to work. So that gave us the ability to actually practice Co-Creation 101. I built this house from a thought, from an idea, and I built it from the ground up before I even put pen to paper on a plan. And then we converted it, and then we co-created it with architects, tradesmen, and what have you, to end up with this physical product or physical place that we live today. And so what I really didn't understand much about co-creation, and I admit that. The 16 years I was there was actually to create the experience of it. So I fundamentally understood it because I practiced it. I practiced it, and I still do today. And so the word co-creation means, I'm just going around your questions in a little bit of a different way. Co-creation means that we are all extensions of source. Therefore, we're from the same energy. But co-creation means that whatever we invite into our lives, or whatever we manifest in our lives, is not a creation. It is a co-creation for somewhere along that stream of manifestation. There is somebody else involved. In fact, many people are involved in the process of anybody manifesting, anybody co-creating. It's a cooperative, collaborative, co-creative thing. Anything you do on this planet and in the physical world is a co-creation. Mm-hmm. The only energy that created, and it created it once, was Source when it awoke and set the intention to experience everything and created infinite versions of itself as expressions to go out into physicality and experience physicality, for which all of these experiences are channeled back to Source. So it grows, but it allows us to grow in a physical expression, in a physical world. Okay, mm-hmm. That's, in many ways, people are looking for purpose. That is mankind, and all physical intelligence purpose is to be the expression of Source in physical form through the process of catalyzing experience after experience after experience, and then turning that into their version of a reality, and doing that again and again and again. Now, can you imagine 7.6 billion people on this planet that do experiences every microsecond? Now, all of these experiences are instantaneously processed by Source. And Source has all these experiences of every one of us. And Source understands and begins to understand. You could say it was the system that gave it the understanding of what it already knew. You could say when Source woke up, or in that state, it was a scholar. It had all the theory, and it knew what it knew, but Source had no experience of the scholarly, you could say, intellectual. That is the nearest words I can put together, because I get information, and there sometimes aren't words that can express it. So my work is to give a near as possible identification of what goes on so we contextualize it in human terms. Source Source doesn't have feelings. Source is feeling, and Source is love. That's all it is. Okay, it's not human in the fact that we are Source, and we constructed ourselves. That's who we are. We're extensions of that, and everything that we embody in the physical body is there so we can identify through the physical body as its means, the catalyst, the system by which we identify with emotions and physical attributes to do that. Now, in 2016, when I got the mission, it was a 30-year plan. And the plan was to give humanity the option and the opportunity to remember who they are. Two to 5,000 years ago, there were certain avatars that appeared on this world, and today there are more. We'll talk about the new evolution of consciousness a little later. That came into the world with an understanding of who they are and who humanity was. Many of you will know them as Jesus Christ and Buddha and Muhammad and many others, but there were others that are not so well known that also appeared right through. They always carried the same message. You see, it was different times. They had to walk from village to village telling the stories. They had to try and tell the stories in a way that the villagers understood, because in those days they were peasants, they were farmers, they were fishermen, they were uneducated, they could not read and write, so everything was by word of mouth. And so, Joshua ben Joseph, aka Joseph Clive, would walk from one village to another, spreading his message. But, get to the village and suddenly, oh hell, they speak a different dialect. And so they'd have to get an interpreter, and hopefully the interpreter would interpret the story correctly. And if they didn't, there would be a different version that would appear. That is why it's taken thousands of years for these theologies to traction. Thousands of years. The time of Buddha has taken 5,000 years. Christianity, 5,000 years. Judaism, probably 7,000 to 10,000 years. So it's taken a long time for it to gain traction. And it's done it through a thing called culture and through those things. But in between, man, being man who loves power, have turned it into a different story. So the stories have changed, they have spun out. But the message that we are an extension of the source, here to create physical experience, never changed. Never changed.
Yeah.
In any of them. And so we are back again, if you like, to begin to get mankind to fully understand. Because things are different in the 21st century.
Yes.
For nearly 20,000 years, the population of this planet has stayed virtually static, around 500 million to 1 billion. In the middle of the 17th, 18th century, we had the beginning of the industrial age and the technological age. And our ability to innovate, and with that came the advances in modern medicine, the management of diseases, the increase of longevity, and the population from 1800 went vertical, from just under 2 billion to nearly 8 billion in less than 100 years. That growth if, unless we have a major catastrophe of one form or another, that will continue to probably 11 billion by the beginning of the 22nd century.
Wow.
Now, that's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's that we are not connected. All of the things you see in the world, the environmental impact we have, the ecological impact, the disease we're also co-creating that's coming back to bite us, are all the symptom of lack of separation. We are separated from the earth. We are separated from ourselves. You know, tribalism and culture has been formed as part of the separation. We are still tribal as a human collective. We live in tribes. We live in our cultures. We fight for resources that we think are lacking. We have wars, not only just political, we have physical wars, we have trade wars, we have water wars, we have food wars, we have all sorts of things. We've been fighting amongst ourselves for thousands.
Because I mean, the energy, I used to tell people, you know, the energy from the wars, just from the chemicals, you know, that were used, nuclear and all of that, that energy has really created a lot of problems and toxic diseases in the world. You know, the frequency, the vibration of it is, you know.
We've created, we've co-created, and this is the word, we all are responsible, all of us, whether we believe it or not. You know, from the time you go to a supermarket and buy food wrapped in plastic and throw the plastic in a bin, you are co-creating the problem with plastic. Okay?
Yes.
The moment you accept the way that things are given to you, and if they are environmentally harmful, if you do not reject them, then of course you accept them, and therefore you're part of the problem. Okay? And so we are looking at 7.5 billion people with the potential to co-destruct. Now, nobody said that this dream, this experiment, could go either way. You see, from a source perspective, we are here to experience. Nobody said we are here to experience good and bad stuff. We actually define it in good and bad, what is called duality, because that gives us an understanding that this experience isn't comfortable. This experience is painful. Therefore, it gives me the opportunity of growth and transformation.
Because I mean, like, I'm finding as well that, especially actually when I was living in Ireland a few years ago, the suicide rate there was crazy. It was so high. And even moving back to Canada, you know, there's been even people, some friends of mine that have committed suicide. And actually a friend just recently, 2 weeks ago, committed suicide. You know, it's they're having a problem adapting to this energy and not knowing how to work with it. What would you suggest? Or what would you...
Many people, see, when there appears to be an energy of hopelessness, there is no fun, they cannot see. They see everything in the terms of darkness, of no hope for the future. And a lot of the young people are in that space. You see, there's more and more depression and anxiety and stress amongst young people. I never got that when I was young in the 50s and 60s. There wasn't that level of stress. We had a really, apart from having a father that was used to beat me up a lot, but that level of anxiety and stress about the world wasn't there. We just got on with our lives, and we went to school and we did what we did, and life was new, it's exciting and evolutionary.
Yeah.
Today it's different, because in my day we had a veggie garden, we had chickens, we had, you know, we lived on the coast and we fished. So we'd come home and the food was fish. My mother, coming from Polish background, would turn it into pickled fish, fried fish, all sorts of fish. And, you know, we lived out, we lived in a little area where there was lots of open country, full of rabbits. So we'd have rabbit stew or fish stew or fish chowder, and we grew our own fresh fruit and vegetables and chicken. So we were pretty much self-sustaining in those days. And so, you know, everything we grew, everything we ate, we brought into the thing. My mother had 5 jobs. My father had 2. I worked, you know, the summer in different jobs. So everybody pooled their financial resources to provide for the family's prosperity. And we came to Australia in 1951 with nothing except 2 suitcases. We built our first house, totally owned it by 1963. That's in less than 51, 52, less than 9 years. And we owned a second one and a couple of others. But the point being is that my mother knew how to co-create. She understood it perfectly. She could not read and write, but from an intuitive perspective and an understanding, she really knew about manifestation and how money worked. I always have a joke. I said my mother was the first one to create the lay-by plan in Australia. You know, she'd go in and say, that television, they said, I want it now, but I'll pay it off. And people would do that. So
if somebody, because you've manifested so many things, and if somebody asked you, because I know there's going to be a lot of questions from viewers, and I know that one of the big questions is going to be, is how do I manifest? How do you manifest?
we will use the word co-creation, but can I just leave that towards the end of the?
Yes, absolutely.
That gives everybody a incentive to stay on for a little while. Now, in the vision plan, and this is a critical point, Source or S.O.L showed me basically how it needs to be done. How do we turn 7.5 billion people who are asleep and begin the process of wakening up? One man can't do it, one woman can't do it. And basically even the Buddha took a lifetime to get it going, and the other guy, JC, took a lifetime. In fact, he didn't. He just handed it on to other people to do it. And they created this theme that actually has created 45,000 versions of Christianity. That's how many exist. But we are here in a field where we have this technology called the internet. And so we are able to deliver the pure understanding, but we're not only here to deliver the intellectual understanding, we're here to deliver the experience. That's why when our courses begin rolling out first quarter of next year, they will be experiential. We will show people how to co-create and manifest from an experiential base. And no matter what anybody tells me, you are here to experience, not to intellectualize. If that was the case, every of the 100 million books of spirituality that have been written since the beginning of the century, if those were really that effective, we would not be seeing a world of still in total separation. We would not be seeing a world where we are still divisive and we are separate and we are still fighting over resources. We would not see a world where lack predominates, where fear predominates, where education is still not available to many children all over the world, where poverty is still rampant whilst others have enough for 10,000 lifetimes. We would not see any of that. And indeed, as a collective, we have co-created all these variables in our experience, but they're here so we can say, we prefer not to be here. We prefer not to create or co-create as a collective the end game. And whilst co-creation exists, its counterpart is co-destruction. You know, we live in a world where we change ourselves, we destroy ourselves, cells, and we co-create new ones. Our bodies are co-creative engines every day, every second. We will live in a world where things go, trees grow, they get big, they fall down, they rot, they go back to the earth. So there's a cycle. So the world is co-creation and co-destruction. However, in our dream state of unconsciousness, we've accelerated that. We've accelerated the co-destruction forces without really understanding what we're doing to the only place we've got, there's no plan B here. I mean, there's no, we can't go to Mars. We really can't. We have to address the issues. And so the issue is, all of the things we see are simply symptoms of separation. Co-creation global came about through the process of understanding what co-creation was, but also to understand that in order to switch it in another direction, we have to create a space. And that space needs to be occupied by 300 million awakening people that march to the same tune. They don't have to come into co-creation global. They can come in as links to the cobweb, if you like. You know, cobwebs have strands and they connect them, they connect and they connect. But as long as they come and play in the same orchestra, instead of playing their tunes in a separate part, it's a bit like, okay, you know, you've got this tune, let's call it the tune of love. And violins are playing their part of the story in one theatre, and woodwinds are playing over here, and brass are playing over there, percussion are playing there. We have to start, it's important that we understand that we have to get them into the one place. And therefore, with that, all of those parts of the band, you say this, a violin's still a violin, it doesn't change the violin. But when they're together, they create the concerto. And it's the concerto's music that affects the other parts of the planet. You could say, when we've got the concerto, when we've got the orchestra in the one space, we create the energy and the frequency of vibration that actually, or what I call super radio station, it actually creates the energy wave that begins the process of transmutation and transformation that affects the planet very quickly. And so in that sense, the 300 million, and yes, the people say, why 300 million? It is a mathematical model given to me by source. I don't know much about spiritual mathematics, but it's based on base 12 maths.
But when soul's talking to you, you got to listen.
Yeah. And so the other thing that 300 million people, it's the size of the population of the United States and Canada. Okay. So it provides a cantilever, an equilibrium basis, a gravitational equalizer, if you like, where the energy of the unawakened matches the energy of predominantly powerful organizations and countries with a balancing system. Now, if you think about it, inside 300 million people, there will be people with skills in every possible area on the planet, from scientists right through to artists and singers and politicians and everything else. Now, these people are awake. Hopefully, a good portion of those are the younger ones who are awakening or awake, who become the future politicians, scientists, ecologists, and wise people, influencers of the future. So we're actually focusing on drawing them into the conversation and getting them, because what do they call us? The old guard, we're going. We're not going to be around in 20, 30, 40 years. If I finish this, I'll be 102.
Well, you never know,
No,
Bob. I
that's
mean, like with your energy, you never know. Like you never know. You hear people that live to like 120 years old. Like,
well, if I'm using what sources taught me, I will change the nature of my DNA and the nature of my genealogy, and maybe push it up to 120, 150. And if I can find the Methuselah gene, maybe that'll be 800 or 900 years. So I'll be around to say, well, remember in 2000, 2300, I saw that period. But
you got to let me interview you though when you reach
yeah,
age
you'll have to be about the same age. So the Co-Creation Global is a space where we invite people through the platform we're building. We're building a new website, and that website is a platform for their voice, the voice of the young who are consciously awakening, the voice of the new influencers who are consciously awakening, where they're doing it, and we want to give them the space to be able to become visible and to become the new, the Hay House people, the authors and writers that we know today. And we want these people to be brought up into the world and seen and experience and become influencers in their own right. So we're providing this space, and we invite people in. You see, Co-Creation Global is not me. It's not even S.O.L. We are carriers of the space and carriers of the message. It's the 300 million people that join us that create, that co-create Co-Creation Global. And secondly, we're not here to lead that group. That group will be self-led. It will be organically led. It will be organically create its own space. It will have the necessary internal intelligence to move away from conflict and separation, and it will actually, it's like a river. It'll actually run through, it'll cut its way through all the dross, create its own valleys, and actually get to the sea. All by its own. All we do is provide the space, the counsel, and we assist new leaders who bring their people in to evolve and transform and become the shining lights themselves personally. So we assist people to raise themselves up vibrationally, transform, transmute their limitations. And what we offer is infinite possibilities. That's what we bring to this space. Infinite possibilities to turn this planet around from where it is today to a golden age of opportunity and infinite possibilities. And that's what mankind was always here to do.
Yes.
It's just got off the rails. Well, it hasn't got off the rails. It's going where it needs to go because, you know, in the collective experience, we are here to create the collective experience until we decide that this collective experience is a whoops, we got it wrong. And where do we go from here? So that's an awakening moment for the collective.
Yes.
But we need this catalyst. We need to trigger.
Absolutely, because I mean, even for myself, I mean, I'm, you know, clairvoyant, medium, animal communicator. I do past life readings, you know, and help a lot of different people. And my goal has all, because I channel and work with the Christ consciousness, and my goal is, even if I could help one person a day, even one person a day, that person, you know, whenever they're more grounded and they have the clarity, you know, they can help other people, and then it creates, of course, that group collective consciousness. And it's so important, the work. Like every month I hold meditation classes and come together as a group consciousness, and I line everybody up, and just that energy, just from even that night, it sends that frequency and vibration out to the world. It truly does. So it's very important to really, and I'm so happy that you created this, because that's why it's like, yes, I can connect with this very deeply.
with meditation, meditation has many benefits. We see meditation works on this inner level. We work on the infinite level, and that's that there's a different approach to this. Meditation has its value physiologically, emotionally, mentally, and indeed to a degree energetically. And I am the last to say it has major benefits and has turned many lives around because I used it extensively in clinical practice. But meditation isn't source, because where is source? Where is it? You see, this is where people really don't quite understand that particular element of engagement. And part of the journey is to understand that source is already there. When you're looking outside of yourself, and meditation to a degree is an outside of yourself, because we are looking at places where if you have a location for it, it's outside of ourselves, because source has no location. It's non-local.
It's within.
Let me just explain that to you as a picture. If you imagine source consciousness being a really big soap bubble, okay? So big you can't see the outer skin of the bubble. You know, you're floating around, there it is, there's source, okay? And inside of that, the space inside of that is all love, all knowing, and all possibilities. Okay, now inside that, there's little Bob, you know, floating around, happy as Larry, you know, in his little own bubble. Now he's got the skin of the bubble. Inside of that is Bob's world. That's the local world. That's the world that I've developed from a kid, and all my beliefs and everything else is in there. And there is bubble. That bubble is his separation. Okay. Now, what if little Bob decided that he had this inspiration and said, I've got this pin in my pocket. What would happen if I busted that skin? What would happen? So the awakening process is like this, aha. Okay, I find the pin that busts, that breaks the outer bubble. And when you break the outer bubble, what happens?
Yeah.
When you break the outer bubble of your own little bubble inside this big space.
Get cluttered, yeah.
Well, no, what you do is you've got no more separation, and you merge with that infinite source energy. You become part of that immediately. Okay? There is no more separation because you busted the separate bubble. And you're already in that. So what happens is little Bob becomes big Bob. And it becomes the same frequency, the same energy. Okay? There's a trick to doing that in the physical world. But just to round off the original conversation, I'll get to that, to the heart of the matter in a minute. Co-Creation Global was designed to invite everybody in that wants to make the difference, wants to make a change. We walk in lockstep, we walk in unity, and we invite all people from all tribes, all religions, all creeds, all colours, everything into this bubble to play the same concerto. And so we can affect. You see, the problem isn't the 300. They're already awake. The issue is the people, the majority of the world population, which still goes on to burn forests. It still goes on in destroying species of animals and insects and what have you. It's still what it does. The reason for that is they still live in fear and of lack. Most of them still live in poverty and struggle. So they need to chop down forests so they can grow more maize or corn or whatever it is to survive. Their children continue the process of what they do because they're not educated. You see, it's a cycle. It's this evolutionary cycle, and that what is handed down from generation to generation to generation, unless something changes, those children just carry on. And we need to break those cycles. So the 300 million is also the repository where we start bringing through what is called money to provide services to train young men and women and children in places where they can't get the education in virtual living rooms. We will use the latest in technology to transmit the internet into villages and places in Peru where they can't get the internet, in Africa, in the steppes of Mongolia, anywhere where we can get them in front of a little tablet, which will provide free of charge, and create virtual classrooms for these kids. We will teach inner work, that we will teach them that our world is the world that the inner creates the outer, but we'll also teach them the necessary stuff for them to create in the physical world. You know, things like math, science, physics, all of those sort of things, so they can find opportunities they would never have in that space, in that world. And we will teach villages to go back to their roots and start intercommunal social trading systems. So they can, if this man has a bull and this man has 3 cows, that by increasing the herd, you produce more milk, you produce more meat, and you can build up that herd, that you can sell the excess, you get more money, you can grow more maize, you get more money, you can buy solar power for the roofs of your houses, you can put in fridges, and you can do all those sort of things. Okay, it increases the capacity of those towards living more comfortable lives and not rely on somebody paying them less than $1 a day to work in some dirty mine in Africa. Excuse me. Okay, so we need to break the cycle. And the only way to break the cycle is to break the wheel of poverty and the wheel of fear and the wheel of lack of education. Nearly 60% of our world lives in those states. You know, we live in Canada and we live in Australia. We live in relatively what we call, you know, what we earn. I could feed 10 villages a week.
Absolutely.
In Africa, 10 villages, you know, comprising about 400 or 500 people. And so, you know, we don't really understand, because our dynamic is about our world, what our world is like. We have no relative understanding what it's like for somebody in Syria to be bombed. What is something like, and to lose their families. We don't have any experience of somebody being abducted and sold into slavery. We don't have any experience of struggling to keep 4 kids alive with $1 a day and food. We have none of that. So we see we don't have a global compassion. We have local compassion. And the beauty of humanity is there's so many opportunities. We can love ourselves, we can love our children, yet we can kill our neighbor.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is the you know, this is the interesting thing about, you know, humanity. But if we're awoke, if we could suddenly tune in, and everybody else's dilemmas and their fears became our fears consciously, might not drive us nuts. Secondly, we would open up to global compassion, and we haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
That's part of learning to live from a place of seeing the world and everybody in it as you.
Because like, even with me, like, my definition is like a fear is, you know, fear, when you grab a hold of your fears and face your fears, that brings you closer to truth. You know, that's how I take fears. So a lot of fears, you know, of course, people like scared, they don't want to go through the uncomfortable, you know, emotions of it all. But it's like I always say, you know what, jump into your fears and face it, because that you liberate your soul, you liberate yourself, and you see the truth of everything.
But you see, I see a lot of this information coming from a Western-based source, and when they talk about it, the context is Western-based experience. Nobody's written a book by an African in an Ubuntu village saying this is our experience of this, and it will be entirely different. It's written by people in America, Canada, Australia, UK, wherever it is. It's a Western perspective, and it's not the global perspective at all. It's just a local perspective, because I suppose for the bookseller, that's where all the money is going to come from. It's, it's addressing issues in that particular social economic system. But it's not the world at all. And I keep reminding many people, I said, what you're experiencing is not what the rest of the world experiences.
That's right.
I have people coming to me and say, yeah, we're all waking up. And I say to them, show me where. When have you been to Africa? When have you been to Nigeria? Have you gone to Syria? Have you been in Lebanon? Have you been in the Palestinian Gaza Strip? Have you been into Chile? Have you been to Argentina? Have you been to places where the world is completely different? And the answer is no. So they do not know. And that's part of our journey. We do not know. Locally, we know nothing. We don't even know what our neighbour's up to most of the time. We know nothing. However, if we can turn and understand that Source knows everything, even though he doesn't always send us everything, but part of our world is to experience, but in the sense that two things I learned in 60 years, patience and trust. That trust, I know that I don't need to know, because I ride on the back of Source wisdom. That's basically what I've been doing for 60 years. And I trust that absolutely implicitly. And because I have done, it's never done me wrong. It's always led me in the right direction. And even the day I was sitting in London, I got to my last pound note. I was walking along Soho, I looked down the street, and there's this crumpled bit of paper, I picked it up. It was a £50 note. Okay? So that's the way it works. But the point is that, local, we know not, we can't even, our brains can't even process more than 40 megabits a second. 90% of the stuff we see and feel and hear is shunted down into hard drives that we don't even see. So we're very selective in our ability to manage local information. I don't even worry about it. I use it to process activities, but not for the most of the stuff. I bring it through from intuition. What if everybody could tap into that intuition, as I did in 1989, and channel exactly 5 courses that I had no experience of before, and never read a book on any forms of business intuition, medical intuition, and other intuitive capabilities. And in 3.5 hours of writing as fast as I could get it, I actually had 4 courses sitting down that were activated at a sore arm. And what if people can not need to listen to other people who send their information through their belief filters? Every book on the planet that has ever been written has been by a human who has maybe brought some of that through, but everybody's talents are locked into their belief systems, their understandings, their culture, and we are influenced by people. We have this deification system that puts people on pedestals because they know more than us. Yes, they do. They know more intellectually. The question is, in the driving space, do they apply what they say they do? I have no judgment of that. That is,
because we all have our own.
Most people generate a book The book's not for the audience. That's a byproduct. The book is for them. It's part of their journey of evolving and developing new forms of understanding. And that's for everybody. But what if you can tap into that infinite possibility of all things? And instead of relying on somebody else, you knew that you could trust that quiet voice, that loving voice, that voice of all-knowing, that wisdom from within inside you. What if the planet could actually be sponsored to understand that and use it? We would have a completely different place. First of all, we would evoke telepathy. And suddenly that new skill, which is there already, all the wiring is there.
Yeah.
And we could think the same, we could feel the same, we could think together, but we think as a independent, but also collective, conscious collective. And we would think in a different way, because inside of us now we tap into the source of all love, the source of all understanding, the source of all wisdom. And so we'd work in lockstep. We would not make decisions that would harm another person, another life form, or the planet. That's where the difference is. And so the stepping stone to that is the 300 million pod called Co-Creation Global, which is not a container for just us. We invite anybody who wishes to play in the orchestra along and to co-create with us globally. Now, to answer your question, and the question is that how do we go about doing this? Okay.
They're going to want to hear about it, Bob.
Of course, I'm going to give it to them. I'm just trying to find the correct
words
to words to do this. To say the words that you are already source and there's nowhere else to go doesn't mean a lot, because you can't get into that space. But you are already there. This body is glued together by a part of us that we never see. And a lot of people have said this before. If you want to look into the eyes of God or source, look in a mirror. Or look into the eyes of another person, because you see your reflection self in that. If we were to simply drop our physical bodies and the skins that we look, you and I look differently, but underneath that, and we could just see the energy, we would all look the same. Would be bright lights, dancing and playing around at different frequencies. And that's all we are, really, with frequency. The illusion of the body is an illusion only because we co-created. And I say we co-created these bodies with senses. You switch all those senses off, you have no local understanding of physicality. It disappears. Ever talk to a blind man and ask him or her what their world looks like without sight? They have a different perspective of reality. Talk to a blind person and one who's also deaf.
Yeah.
What their world looks like. They do have ways of communicating, by the way, but it's completely different.
It would have been interesting to find out how Helen Keller, deaf and blind, what she saw.
I don't know. I haven't met the lady, but she would have. Maybe I should channel her. Anyway, she would have.
That's another show.
Another show. She would have had taste. Her taste particles would be really set. She would have the only thing I could suggest is that she had touch, and her world would be the world of touch. And a sensory internal system that she would have evolved called knowing. So she would have intuition linked with touch. That touch and taste would be her other two senses. that would have able to her communicate, and she would have had a sense. If she was born with those, there's been no relative understanding what the world looks through the optical systems or auditory systems. She would not hear a bird. She would not even understand what a bird is. But if she put a bird in her hand, she could feel its warmth and its
Yeah.
feathers,
Energy.
and she could feel the vibration of the tweeting. So her words, her understanding of that world would be about the world of senses, which would be highly attuned. And she'd still have an understanding of that little creature in her hand, its warmth and its gentleness and its ability to communicate to her, and through her, the tweets, the cheeping, would be the vibration she would feel through her hands, which would be highly sensitized. And her world would be of touch and taste, and that would just be about it. But the internal senses would be highly developed.
Yeah.
The internal knowing and everything.
Yeah, it would give you more abilities, because I find that for every, like trauma, let's say for an example, like I always turn a negative into a positive.
Yeah.
And any, let's say, so trauma or anything like that one goes through, it actually makes that person stronger. Like some people it does the opposite, of course, but I find that, like for me, for instance, I've had so many people pass on me. Like I had 17 people pass, and both my dogs in a year and a half, and then a lot more people passed on from them. And it's interesting because each person that has passed, or even any of the animals that has been here, it's opened me up to see a lot more.
Yep.
So it's just interesting when certain situations come aboard, how a person can go either way with it.
My journey started with trauma.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, my journey started because my father, who was an alcoholic, used to beat everybody up. And because I was a really, I was a talk-back kid. So even though I got a beating, I'd also get the last word, so I'd get two. And after a while, it gets you, it gets you down, because it's like you're always being beaten upon, whether verbally or physically. And that's how I actually started, how S.O.L came in as my voice for comfort and guidance, and never went away. It's been my sidekick, if you like, for 60 odd years, and has been the instrument of this evolution of co-creation and co-creation global. Let's give the people out there a little taste of what we do. Since I started this journey, and this journey started 13 months ago when I was sitting, no, it actually started 2016, but I procrastinated. I was so overwhelmed that I sat on the whole thing for nearly 13, 14 months. I kept looking at this immense project, 30 years, and if I calculate the amount of people that needed to run this operation, it sits at hundreds. Now I was sitting in my library looking at the birds in the bush at the back, and I said to S.O.L, okay, I am not doing this by myself. I said, if you provide the people, the money, the infrastructure, and everything to put it together, in other words, you have to be the major instrument of co-creating this. And you know what I was doing? I was having a conversation with me and me. When S.O.L appears in the thing, I said to people, S.O.L is you. It's S.O.L that you cannot see, you cannot hear. You have been unable to access that frequency, and certainly not download it, or if you do download it, it's not really clear. So my system is to allow S.O.L to appear, and in a language that you will understand. Later on, we will dissipate courses where you can begin to learn how to access this. But in the meantime, I'm going to step you through how we have co-created from nothing to the next step, which is the building block of a complete platform, and therefore up to beyond. How we actually created the magazine and where we are today. I said to you, the building blocks of anything in this world is about co-creation, and therefore co-creation is about bringing other people. Now, when I first started, there was myself and Kim, who's in Colorado, and Kim and I were, we discovered ourselves in an online program around 2 years ago.
I lived in Colorado. I don't.
Okay.
I lived in Colorado Springs.
Well, she's near Denver. Anyway, I'll put you in touch. Anyway, the whole thing about this is we started off and we didn't know where we were going. Neither do we know what we were doing. But I said, look, let's co-create something. And I met a person who introduced me to a lady who's doing these magazine things. So I met her, we had a long discussion, I went to a presentation, and it all fitted, it just resonated. And she was offering this magazine with all the support, the infrastructure, the publishing, the graphics, the building blocks, the editorial team, the publicity team, the lot, the shit. So I shunted out a whole chunk of money, and I said, okay, cool, we'll go create, and we'll call it Co-Creation Magazine. And so we've been running that for a year, 13 months exact. And we have done our 3rd issue. We're now finishing the 4th issue, but we'll be moving the magazine over to the website, and we're going to turn it into a multimedia magazine. So people can send their stories as text, but also video and also audio. So we're going full in a different direction. Anyway, this manifestation, this co-creation, was between me, Kim, and the Reed Publishing Group, the people that put it together. And they did a superb job. Anybody, if you go into co-creation, that's co-creationmagazine.com, have a look at the magazine, and most people tell us it's a great magazine from content and presentation. So the magazine was really designed as a voice for co-creation, and in the future it'll be a blog style, but it'll be not only a magazine for the content, but it will be a magazine for other writers and other consciousness up-and-coming leaders to tell their stories and to actually propel them into visibility. So all of that began the journey of building the magazine. Now, I said to you that co-creation is about the building blocks. You see, to build a capsule, a space to hold 300 million people, we have to build a skyscraper. And the foundation of a skyscraper is the people. So for the last 9 months, I have been co-creating, coordinating, and manifesting a team of people with precise skills. And I know exactly what was needed. And I set out, first of all, the first step was to gain clarity. What people do I need in order to build the foundation? There's 8 of them. We got to 6 3 weeks ago, and we have 2 more. So we will complete the chain in the next couple of weeks. We have 2 more coming on board. So we'll have a complete team of specialists in every element of the digital ecology, from social media to content, to brand, to all sorts of things, to media, the lot. That's taken 9.5 months to manifest those, and they're just there, so they're new, so we have to start integrating.
But 9 months is birth, don't forget.
Sorry?
9 months is birth.
Okay, okay, I'll take your word for it. But So the first step was clarity. I had to be really clear on the building blocks. What did we need to build the foundation of this business in order to build the first story? I also had to be clear on the next step, which is the actual look, appearance, and structure of the website, okay, and its platform. Okay, I also had to be clear on the position of social media. Now, when I started, I couldn't spell Facebook, never used it, still don't much. I just get my social media manager and says, what do I need to do? And she tells me and I do it. That's it. Instagram is even more of a mystery. And so, you know, Astrid's beautiful. You know, she's millennial. And I said, you're going to help me out here because I don't speak millennial. Okay, so we need an interpreter. And she came and she was the exact manifestation. I was looking for somebody who was young, who had experience across different social media ecologies, that could see where our weaknesses were and where our strengths were, and start pulling and accessing and building the community. Kim, on the other hand, she is pretty much eclectic. She can do anything, but her job is to build the community. She's engagement. She starts talking to and building engaging with the leaders in that community, building ambassador programs and everything else inside of that. We have another lady who's also another Kim, and Kim's our resident clown and also host. She's lovely. She's a laugh. I have a he lives up the road, and he found his way to me. I've never written a book, but I have a publisher and a literary agent, and I may never write a book. I might just do it all on video. But he was introduced to me, and Darren does all our videos and all our media, and he's very, very talented. And there's a couple of others, but I was really clear on all the elements of that foundation. So that's step one. Before you start to go anywhere, spend more time on clarity than anything else. Be really clear and process it. You know, even if you go and revisit it, but shave it down and be very clear. That's the first step. The next step, set your intention based on clarity. Our intention was to build the foundation with people with the skill sets that we wanted. Okay, exactly. And then inside of that, open your heart. And here's the trick with most people. They have no idea how to balance giving and receiving. And that is a duality system. We are conditioned as a society in many cultures to give and to give and to give and to give until the tank's empty. You say you can't drive a car with an empty tank.
Yeah.
You won't go anywhere. Okay, so what's the answer? Well, you've got to put gas in it, or petrol. We call it petrol, you call it gas. You know, you put it in, and you fill it up, and the car goes again. Okay? So, in order for things to work from that level, we say to you, it is better to receive than to give. Because in the receiving, when you receive more than you ask for, you have surplus. Surplus allows you to share with others. When you get less than you need, you are in struggle because you're always struggling to find another a quart of gas to put in your tank because you haven't got enough. So when you open your heart to infinite possibilities, That's the trick. That's number 3. Number 4 is the tricky one.
Is the what?
It's the tricky one.
Okay.
You have to step into the vibration of being source. Being. That is neither a meditation nor a visualization. It is a process of intentional frequency change. You have to, I usually have, I add a little mantra. He said, I am co-creator of all my experiences, and I invite this intention into the world of infinite possibilities. I don't need to do that so much these days because Little Bob and Big Bob have a really good arrangement. So I just step out of being Little Bob and become Big Bob, and I work from that space. That could be 5 minutes, it could be 5 hours.
Mm.
But you see, you begin to learn in that state that you can do it more and more frequently. You can do it for longer periods of time until it becomes a natural state of ongoing state of being. That's the way we were meant to live, to work from that state of being source. It's a frequency shift, I call it a phase shift, into another frequency. Now, what happens from there on is that if you are working from a state of source and you are sending this signal out for a new social media manager, let's just work on our concept. And so what happens is that every person on the planet that has that skill set gets the message. Okay, so it's just like, it's what I call the internet. It is actually co-creation for our world is actually a spiritual logistics chain. You know, it goes from one to another to another. So what happens when you send this out? Little lights pop up. Said, I heard you, I heard you, I heard you, I heard you. And so this is where the next bit needs to take place. You just have to have patience. Okay? Those who have just started out the journey, it takes them a long time because they've got to, what I call, ramp up the frequencies a bit. But it's taken 6.5 months for the social media manager to turn up. But I had very specific, if I had, look, social media manager, just Facebook, I probably would have got a few, but I needed a broader fix. I needed a younger person who could talk millennial. So I had a specifically unique skill sets and frequency. Now, on top of that list, you could say, there's one predominant factor, 2 other predominant factors, 3. One, first of all, the volunteers. We are in the process of monetization. So we have volunteers. Secondly, it is important that they understand our frequency. So frequency matching is absolutely essential. If they're not in our frequency, it won't work.
Yeah.
Thirdly, they must be able to work with a team as one consciousness, togetherness, identify with our skills, break it down into its modules, and we work fluidly. Sometimes one person has a skill set, another one needs it. We shift. We share those skills in a fluid basis. So we work quite completely differently from structured organizations. We're different. We're actually building a new model of understanding what a business is, what I call spiritual business. Anyway, so based on those points, patience is, you just have to wait for the thing to arrive. The next thing is step away from it. Let it do its work. Trust the process and just, get on with your day-to-day thing and it will arrive. And the whole thing about humans is that they don't do that. I said, S.O.L always talks about the building, creating rivers. I said, in the human world, when we want to create a river, we go to the garage, get a shovel and a pick, and start digging a ditch. and we start putting water in, hoping we get enough water there to create the momentum of a river, and we'll get it to source. Well, that's 80% perspiration, 20% inspiration. When you go to source, says need a river, the source says, right, okay, spring, okay, how much water you need? I said, a lot, and it starts the whole process. And from source point of view, it's 80% inspiration, 20% perspiration. So it's called flow. The other one's called force.
I always tell everybody when things are flowing, you're on the right track. You're on the right path.
Yeah. But
because when you disturb the current, then things are going to go against the current.
Flow is about using the frequency of source that you are, as opposed to little Bob picking shovels and digging holes. Okay. Over here, and that's hard work. Over here, source does it all for you. And quite frankly, I've got two criteria: make it simple and make it quick and make it easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And part of our journey, part of our understanding is that when we teach in those criteria: simple, quick, easy. Something that is engaging and they can apply in their day-to-day lives, provided they apply it. That's the trick. We can teach till the cows come home, but if people don't apply it, it's never going to work. So we're even, I've been around for long enough to know, the habitual natures of humans. So we will create little what I call little forums where we prod them and help them along to keep them on track. And so, we'll provide all the infrastructure that if they get off the course, we'll help along. And we'll throw tools out like crutches and wheelchairs if they need all of that sort of stuff to get where they're going. We'll give them all the help we need. But essentially, I said to somebody, I could teach them everything to do with co-creation in a 2-hour course, and they would need nothing else. Nothing else forever if they applied it. The point I'm getting to is humans don't trust simplicity. They've been taught, you go out and look at all the white noise and all the courses and all the stuff that everybody's talking about there, and it's complicated. You go, oh, who do I listen to? Who's right? Who's wrong? Who applies to this? And you're jumping around all over the place. And some of it's in complicated language. The language that S.O.L has encouraged me to do is to make it as simple that an 8-year-old can understand it, and so can a PhD. Okay? So that when we engage in the conversation of understanding how to work with this, simple is the best process, the best approach. But we'll give them complexity if they want it. If they don't understand how to apply it, they know how to apply it here, but don't understand how to apply it there, we'll show them how to do that too.
Yeah.
So
I find it's the balance of the giving and the receiving. To balance that.
Yeah. So that's the big giveaway, to your views, and if someone just apply that, that's cool. But, we're here as the engine for a new concept of spiritual evolution. It's exciting. The challenge is that as humankind has not been used to integration, convergence. They're trying it. They are, they still don't, because we live in silos. We live in fenced offices, fenced things. We don't, the American Indians and your Indians in Canada, Australian Aboriginals understand family and integration. Our societies don't. And so, you have all these separate spiritual groups that even talk the same language. don't understand that in order to facilitate change, it's better to have 1 million of them than 2,000 of them.
Yes.
And you can do far more with 1 million than you can with 2,000.
You all do the walkabout together.
Absolutely. But, you know, we can't get away from this. The thing, we've got a fund. People don't understand that to run an operation as big as this, it costs millions of dollars to keep it going. So therefore, the trajectory of money is not only to keep us going, to keep us alive, to keep us visible, but we need those funds to do what we need to do in fielding all of these boots on the ground projects for poverty management, poverty education, for children's education, re-education services all over the world. This is not done without paying and sending people into Peru, into Mongolia, into Africa to start the whole process going. And to keep it going, we will use technology, but eventually we train people locally and then leave and go somewhere else. But all of that needs to be funded. And I'm talking about billions of dollars at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
We created the system called money, and it is part of the process of manifestation. And let me say to you that if you really understand that what love is, we actually are here to not only understand that we are source in creating physical experiences, but we're also source learning to apply love. And if you understand that source is love, you take love and transmute it into currency, and it becomes a form of love. We also have to learn to understand and love money. You know, it's how the whole system of, you know, we are traders. We've been traders since the beginning of time, and we are still today. And we haven't really grasped that. That's a form of consciousness. It's also a form of love. Everything we do, you know, leads us towards that place of learning to understand. In the physical world, we experience love. We learn to love at all different levels and different facets of our experiences, and we learn to apply it, but we don't yet understand we are it. That's where we shift the separation of the veil into a state of that. When we walk the earth as beings of love, as beings of source, even though we still have the same physical characteristics, we change the whole perspective of the earthly, global, and individual experience. And I'll leave on that note. Thank you, Jeni. I think we've taken a lot of your time today. This is probably the longest interview ever, but
It's been great though. Like, I mean, like we could talk for hours, you know what I mean? There's just so much information to be able to share. And I know that there's going to be a lot of questions, of course. And that's why I kept on hearing manifest. And I'm like, okay, I got to get it out there. Right. And I mean, even on my show that's coming out, Soul to Soul Connection with Jeni G, I want you to come on that as well. And
I'll be very happy to, yes.
yeah, because I mean, it's, you know, the more energy, the more word that gets out there to raise the level of consciousness. You know, that's why I said earlier, for every one person that I could help, even one person per day, that for me is my reward, because that could save that person's life and create a lot more peace and understanding with humanity. So
I'll the next time we meet, I just make a mental note of it. I can make a physical date. I will talk to you about, you seem to have an interest in numbers. So I will talk to you about the 1 + 2, what I call the 1 + 2 system, which is the number 3 I believe in numerology. If you know what a 3 is, you'll understand
Yes.
what the,
I'm 33.6. My number was 33.6. That's Christ consciousness.
yeah.
So that's why I work and channel with the Christ consciousness.
Well, the 1 + 2 is actually where one person teaches 2 people about consciousness. And those 2 people repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. Now, if you understand that the number is 3, what it is a transposition and transmutation of energy to 3 people who repeat and repeat and repeat. So if you take 1 million people teaching 2 people per 6 months or per year, that's 1 million people starting there. There's 3 million by the following year. There's 6 by the following year. There's 12 by the year afterwards. And you can actually get to that very quickly. But what they do is they create a covenant, an agreement, that when you train a person, that they're confident and you do it. We do that. We don't set in ground rules. They can charge for it, or they can give it away free, as long as that in the process they agree to train or mentor 2 people, and those people agree to do the same and carry forward and carry forward, carry forward. Yeah, that's the 1 + 2 formula, and that's a process will evolve at a little later stage. We'd like to build the audience up to about 1 million or 2 at that point, and then we'll kick it off as a formal program. But you know, just an idea that, you know, as you're into numerology, I thought I'd just share that with you because it came through around 12 months ago, the 1 + 2, and I'm still sitting on it. By the way, I'm a 268 in my numerological path. I'm just entering a 9 year. It's the last part of my faith.
Well, that's interesting because that's why I brought up 9 for birth.
Yeah.
Remember how you said it took like the, you know, like the 9 months and stuff like that, and 9 is birth. Like a woman gives birth in 9 months.
Yeah. This is my 9th year.
Yeah.
On my whole life chart, and I will be entering the 1 phase. So the 1 phase is the rest of my existence for the next phase of my 130 years, whatever I'm going to be.
Yes. I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay.
And be like, Bob, you know, you're only 100. You're not going anywhere yet, because don't forget the interview.
Well, in many ways, I mean, what we're doing right now, and I'm setting this as a deliberate intention. I'm bringing in to the group young people. They and we will mentor them and sponsor them into leadership tasks. This entity was always designed to last not my lifetime, but thousands of years. Thousands of years. It is designed to go on and on and on, provided that the core understanding is very simple. We're not producing an epistle or a Bible or anything else. It's just so simple. It's understandable and it's doable. And it is what humanity is. So, and the reason that Source named itself Signals of Love and S.O.L is that there's no deification possibilities here. You know, I'm not interested in it. I don't care about it. I'm here to deliver a message, and we're going to go into the world
with a bang.
With a bang. No, not only that, we're going to tell it as it is. It's time the world started not pandering and walking around issues. We're going to get into it and say, well, you created this. What are you going to do to uncreate it?
Yeah.
Because, you know, the global world operates on emotion, and emotion is undeterminable. A bit like the weather. You don't know which way a hurricane's going to go, and humanity is exactly in the same spot. It doesn't know where it's going to go because it's not conscious.
Yeah, very true.
And, you know, hurricanes can go out to sea and flitter away, or they can come in and cause mass destruction.
Oh yes, I remember now from Hawaii. I went to Hawaii. I go usually every year, and I went and I didn't realize it. And whenever I checked into my hotel, they literally put me like on the 33rd floor, and it was interesting 33 again. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't like being up that high. And I couldn't sleep because there was 3 hurricanes surrounding the island. And I phoned down to the front desk and I'm like, I cannot sleep here. I said, can you please in the morning, not right now because it's really late, can you move me down to a lower floor? And they said, but we gave